Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. So I'm basically going to share a story first with you guys on how social network changed the digital transformation, and also how that can apply to market data and financial services platform in general, right? So I'm going to share you a little video clip, if that works. Good.
If you're sitting in the United States or Europe right now, you've probably never used a Chinese app. But the reality is, if you want to know how the internet will develop, China, the land once known for its cheap rip-offs, has actually become a guide to the future. You know, the internet is the internet, but for China, the internet is more like an intranet. It's largely walled off from the Western world by this incredibly complex system of filters and blocks that we call the Great Firewall. And basically, the Great Firewall blocks any foreign site the Communist Party doesn't think it can control. So that means there is no Facebook, no Twitter, no Google. Instead, what filled the internet vacuum was a generation of Chinese copycats that have grown into huge companies. So for Google, you had Baidu. For YouTube, you had Youku. For Twitter, you had Sina Weibo, and the list goes on and on. It's almost as if the Chinese internet is a lagoon as an aside to the greater ocean of the internet. And in that lagoon, there are these swamp monster apps that bear some resemblance to the creatures in the ocean, but are mutated in some ways because they evolved in a different kind of environment. But things have started to shift in the sense that before, no one outside of the lagoon really cared about the swamp monsters. But now, all of a sudden, some of the features they've developed are so amazing that Western apps are trying to copy them. And the greatest example of this is WeChat. WeChat is an example of, for lack of a better word, a super app. It's a Swiss Army knife that basically does everything for you. It's your WhatsApp, Facebook, Skype, and Uber. It's your Amazon, Instagram, Venmo, and Tinder. But it's other things we don't even have apps for. There are hospitals that have built out whole appointment booking systems. There are investment services. There are even heat maps that show how crowded a place is, be it your favorite shopping mall or a popular tourist site. The list of services goes on basically forever. But it's not the variety of things you can do on WeChat that makes it so powerful. It's the fact that they're all in one app. So why does that matter? Hypothetically, imagine you're sitting at home and one day you notice your corgi is dirty. You open WeChat, hit a few buttons, and a few hours later a man shows up at your door with some shampoo and a big vacuum. Your dog gets cleaned and he looks great. You take a photo, you share it with your friends, and tag the dog cleaning business. You haven't left the app. Your friend who likes Hello Kitty and works a boring office job is slacking off at work and looking at WeChat. She sees the photo of your clean corgi. She decides she wants her poodle clean. She clicks the tag on your photo and orders the same service. Within seconds, the man with the big vacuum is on his way to her house. She pays him, and he's happy because he got paid instantly on WeChat. She starts chatting with you to thank you. Neither of you have left the app. While chatting, she tells you about a new hip noodle joint. She says, you have to come. It's a schlep, but you accept. She orders food while still at her desk. You order a taxi. She pays for the food. On the way to her house, the man with the big vacuum invests the money he earned from both of you into a wealth management product that's probably a little too risky. Neither of you nor the man with the big vacuum have left the app. Both of you arrive and the app tells the kitchen you're there. Your WeChat profile photo pops up on the wall. It's an old photo from the year you had that weird part in your hair. Of course she makes a comment. Your food is served. You notice your meat is a bit overcooked, so you snap a photo and post a disparaging restaurant review. You're already on your phone and you remember you still owe your friend money because she paid. You transfer her money. Neither of you, the man with the big vacuum, nor the restaurant have left the app. At the restaurant, there are no menus, there are no waiters, there is no cashier. There is only WeChat. By rolling so many functions into one single app, it's altered the concept of virality. It's no longer just videos or images or tweets that can go viral. It's a dog washer, noodles, all sorts of companies and products that get the push of a social network. Here in China, that network is 700 million people. Sounds great, right? Well, it is, but using a single app to find a date, schedule an oil change, or notarize a document also enables WeChat to collect a staggering volume of personal data. They know what you talk about, who you talk about it with, what you read, where you go, why you're going there, who's there, how you spend money when you're online, how you spend money when you're offline. The list goes on indefinitely. For advertisers, this is a miracle. It's the combined data of Facebook, Amazon, Google, and PayPal, all in one place.
Right, I stopped right before they talk about human rights and stuff, right? So, so I think that's probably more useful. So basically, so the story shows here is not really about, of course, Solace actually provide their underneath platform for WeBank. That's basically the bank behind the WeChat that providing all the financial services, and Solace being the actual technology doing that. But the whole story is actually about how you actually do, this is a typical digitized business. This is a digital business that is pure, no branches for WeBank, nothing is only from the app. And everything idea that they do on the WeChat is that they build a platform really nicely, kind of easily integrated, and then you just start, a bunch of people start thinking about business ideas and how to mix and match with data and put it on this platform and share it. And then use it, for different kind of financial services, for different, whatever that customer that require, right? So this is what we're talking about, digital transformation. And nowadays, it's not only just about building a system where you get, for example, in market data, you get your market data, get your entitlements sorted out, and that's it. As I probably mentioned in the previous panel, that's only one part of the market. The other part, you really have to understand your customers and then how to actually put the two together really closely, right? So nowadays, we got all kind of data on IoTs and then on hybrid cloud deployment model, how you actually put different environment together. As we all find out, we can't put everything in one cloud nowadays. You have to think about multi-cloud, whether it's actually for risk purpose or whether it's for cost model. You have to think about our hybrid cloud model. And then all kind of AI, machine learning algorithms, how can you easily put in that platform to help your digital transformation? And then of course, everything happening on mobile and on apps, and how to deal with that. Because this is really close to, everyone got, at least probably one mobile phone, there probably more, and how to actually get all those data coming into your platform, and then going through probably different cloud environment, getting analytics engine deploy on that, and then apply all your business logic in microservices. All those big match, the technologies put in one pot to give your digital transformation, strategy. So Gartner says it's about always sensing and always ready. That is the main characteristic of a digital business. It's always ready to receive data, receive signals, receive events, and trigger that to do response and decisions, and then apply that quickly to, whether it's your customers or product or services, right? So go back to market data. So currently, from a technology point of view, I'm a technologist. So I look at it, and I talking to friends, the people who know about market data. I see that's a kind of a mess or chaotic place where lots of vendors handling lots of data sources for exchanges and data sources. So lots of feed handlers in between. And on the other hand, they're handling all kind of customers, all the banks that require those data from different data sources. They provide them. Of course, their value add is their business logic, is their algorithm, is their all those clever things they do on top of the data they push to the customers. And of course, in between, there's connectivity provider only just giving those connectivity to from the source to the consumers, right? So all quite messy, as I put it there. Spaghetti, difficult to manage, and also quite higher cost in terms of the value you bring to the customer, because you spend all this effort managing all those connections and feed handlers, but think about it, there's actually very low value for those tasks. This is almost like in the, 30, 40 days 40 years ago when you actually write Unix program to do TCP IP routing, where Cisco come along, put a switch and router, just plug and play. Right? And this is simply just like routing data, but you put so much effort in that. And then your real value add is where you actually provide your algorithms, your analytic logics is is becoming more just like a big part of the really big business where you spend the most cost on the connectivity side. So we would like to see a better architecture, something like that, right? Where the exchanges data sources put their data straight into a mesh that can be shared among different vendors, different consumers, or even different exchanges themselves. So can everyone just put their data, vendor, after they get hold of market data, put their logic on, after they finish, they put it back to the mesh. And the customer just listening to the mesh. When I say mesh, basically a connected, architecture. It could be just we call it in the old days, call it a bus or messaging bus. But basically, put it in a mesh is also aligned with the Gartner's idea of I think in the next 2 years or something, like over 50 or 60% of the business will be on event-driven business. That means everything is all triggered by events. And how do you do that? You need to build a kind of event mesh for people to listen to those events really quickly. All those WeChat stories that you guys heard about is basically from a very, close to the market, close to the customer layer, where they start firing all kind of events, whether it's an order, whether it's a review, all those kind of event triggering, corresponding microservices on the other side of the mesh to respond, and then put the response back to the mesh, and then quickly push to the source, to the provider, service provider and consumer, right? So can we build something like that, basically for market data, to simplify the whole architecture, save costs, and then make it more, basically based on the mesh, make it more scalable and reliability, all those considerations. You don't need to think about DR or HA anymore because it's all on the mesh. So you're not going to worry about your lost messages. If you lose one, you ask the mesh, can I have a replay of, from when to when that message, push it back to me. And that message could be market data, or could be some kind of order action that you triggered, you invoked, right? So all those data will be available on that mesh. So that will be a better architecture. And then a step further, basically, with this hybrid cloud environment, can we achieve something like that? Having a mesh deploy on the cloud, different on-prem data center if you wish, and then just sharing everything. So that means a consumer or service provider there, they don't actually know anything, the market data participant coming into the cloud asking for market data. The two doesn't need to know each other. They're just sharing data, and they don't need to care about what kind of environment they put it on. So instead of one vendor start to think about my cloud strategy, my migration strategy, and then how to deal with different clouds, because cloud is typically log you in to the cloud. You use AWS, pretty much all your development will be, stick to AWS, infrastructure, and difficult for you to move to Google, move to Azure, and any other cloud. So how do you break that login? So you don't care, like, if there's a better analytic engine on Google, you can move your data, whether it's market data or whether it's a customer data to the Google cloud easily without caring about all those kind of connectivity. That's what the mesh can do for you. I mean, that's what we put down. Like, the mesh can do that because it's actually based on open API and open protocol. That's one key thing which I will highlight later with more details. Because how come Cisco can actually do a router and switch and suddenly you don't need to write program anymore? Everything is just plug and play because there's a TCP standard. Then people start to share, right? So if not, then every clever developer, they all like to sit down and write little kind of smart, socket programming and feel really good. But you can imagine you spend all the effort on the very basic stuff, right? So this multi-cloud, hybrid cloud connectivity model, and also how it actually fit into the bigger market data world. This is a kind of an old slide. I get it from one of our old deck. Basically, the message is the same. We used to call it, before the mesh, we call it Solace message bus, but that does exactly the same thing where you connect. You imagine all the feed handlers, aggregators, or all the educations. It's all a little microservices hanging off that mesh or that bus. right? So some of them, they are providers, data providers. They kind of shooting data to that mesh, to that bus, and some of them, they're listeners or subscribers or consumers. They listen, consume the data. Once they finish, throw it back to the mesh, to the bus, right? So basically, the architecture from your original, like, oh, I got a mobile phone coming in, there's a web server, app server, and database, and storage, all those kind of three-tier or multi-tier design becoming really flat. So you got microservices, which could be whatever Kubernetes enables, so that means it can be a little private cloud sitting there, and then talk to the mesh and talk to the guy who's actually provided data in this simple layer. And the same mesh extended to support your cloud deployment, to support your big data analytics. So if you have already established like a big data lake, for all those static data, you can use that. Or you can put in a smart engine in one of the microservices, like AI engine, and listening to the bus and get all the data that you want to do your kind of streaming analytics, right? Suddenly everything is all possible with this deployment. And how does the mesh exactly, how it works, right? So let's, I'll go through a very simple scenario. And that actually shows you not only, an event mesh is the future for all those, amazing stuff they do on WeChat, on any other kind of platform, and also how you actually integrate with your existing legacy system, like IBM mainframe system. How do you get those data out to share on the cloud in Google, right? So look at it. So this is Solace Plus is actually the mesh building around different cloud and on-premises. You got a JMS message publish. JMS very typically used in the legacy world, from the ESB world, and it's all kind of JMS. So firing a message to the mesh. When it fires the message, he doesn't know who is listening or who actually needs the data. He just like publishing the data, right? And then some guy turn up in the AWS saying, oh, actually, I need this kind of data. So it tells the cloud, it tells the mesh, which is the Solace Plus here, to say, here's the data I need from the mesh. Can you provide it to me? So this mesh will look around, check the provider, including this JMS guy, to say, oh, this actually JMS guy providing the data that you want. And that's on-prem, but doesn't matter. So the Solace mesh layer will route this piece of data to AWS in a really kind of real-time, low latency way, right? So suddenly, this guy got the data, and this data, it could be market data, streaming to his site. And then I got another guy turn up on the Google, cloud, and wanting the same piece of data. What the mesh will do, it will not contact the JMS guy again. The JMS only publish once, and that piece of data get routed, split into two, get routed to Google Cloud, or any other cloud, in fact. Right? So this is the kind of a magic of the cloud, of the mesh, is it actually do all the clever routing, do all the kind of replication of the messages, and then make sure your message is in order, especially important in market data, financial services, the sequence of the data also maintained, right? And in reverse, so another scenario could be like you got a private cloud publishing data from the cloud, and then you got on-prem, application microservices listening to that piece of data and want that data, right? And vice versa. I mean, like basically mesh will handling all the kind of routing logics. And then imagine these two pieces of data, the red lines and the orange line, all actually shared on the same mesh. So it could be on different things, but as I say, right, this could be financial service data, and that could be IoT data coming from a kind of room temperature, like a pressure room temp kind of data into the mesh. But on the mesh, it's all looks the same. Basically, you got a message payload, you got a message header where it shows what the topic is. So from the topic, if you really have an AI engine, plug into the mesh and say, I want this piece of financial data with certain topic and another IoT data with a certain topic, you can start to do your correlation with IoT data and your financial services, and probably to give you a better risk model for your customer, for example, right? So that is the kind of thing you can do without you have to build, your own kind of IoT channel, how the IoT data come in to your, little platform or system, right? all available on the mesh. Okay, so of course that, this scenario here basically showing it doesn't need to be in the same, in kind of on-prem and high cloud. Could be between cloud that you probably need that data to be shared as well, right? So that's how the mesh works, right? So apply the mesh to market data. We're working with some companies like Web Financial, NetDania, Interaction, and also like Privy. We form this kind of a mesh globally. So this is a real deployment. It's basically like streaming market data from Europe, and then you can share it among different regions. And to create this mesh, it's just a few clicks. It's a few clicks on our kind of single pane of glass dashboard. Just like, oh, I want the Asia Pac instance, and then you can select which cloud you want. You select, like in this case, select Google Cloud, and then deploy. The market data starts streaming there if there is a subscriber, a consumer appear in Singapore, for example, right? So you don't need to build or concern or to put your resources into the connectivity side. Basically, you concentrate on your own business logic, right? Suddenly, still this kind of mesh support a whole group of players, like traditionally all kind of vendors having their own kind of algos and different kind of logic. You can actually concentrate on those areas and leave the connectivity to the mesh, right? That's the beauty, that's the idea of it. And then more to come. This is only market data. Imagine, as I say, you want to start to plug in, banking data. You want to put in insurance data, IoT data connected to, for example, in Singapore, a smart city. We're doing a project where they're going to get rid of the ERP. That toll gate. Where the e-toll, basically, when you drive a car, there's a gate, and then when you pass the gate, you get deducted so much money. So they're going to remove all that. Because they're going to have a GPS tracker in your private cars, so they know where you are. So they can give you a very dynamic, like e-toll. Basically, depends on the traffic, congestion. If this road is really busy, they actually charge you more for that road. So when you wake up driving from A to B, they advise you a better route or the cheaper route to go, right? That's all kind of, and then start to charge you, and they even talking about like they don't need to issue parking ticket anymore because they know where you are and park for how long. They can just deduct from your account straight away. They don't need. That's the whole point about Singapore, right? There's no police, and I think it's only you can do it in Singapore. It's probably no other countries. So that's different point. But the idea is that the financial services are so much integrated with this kind of smart city design, right? So how can you actually share those data on the same mesh network and then start doing your cleverness on it? So how does that whole work if I say, oh, open standard, open API, do I need to be open source? Then I lose my value, and then as being a vendor, I need to share source code? No. We support open standard, open API, but not open source. Right? Open standard as in like all kind of like common standard we support from RESTful, standard. If you guys know about MQTT, which is really close to the IoT world, AMQP or Spring, all those stuff we support. That means there's no login. If you don't like Solace provide on that mesh, you can switch to any other players using the same standard. Right? So this is the beauty that, in this morning's panel, we're talking about if there's a bit more standardization in market data, we can really kind of share data happily and then really focus on more important things than just the connectivity with for the market data, right? And then I also kind of covered that already. Basically, market data is only a small part of the mesh can do, or the service or product that you want to offer to your customer. There's other things you can really integrate it. And with the banking integration, working with banks now, some of the banks are actually interested to get some market data straight into their core banking platform and to do investment, wealth management, portfolio, all in their core banking system. So rather than getting another kind of vendor coming in to say, oh, can you build the whole thing on my core banking system? You just need to extend the event mesh between the bank and the market data and your market data platform, and suddenly the banks got all the market data coming in, right? And then you can sell them all the kind of, we call it SaaS, the smart software as a service on top of that platform, and they will be happy, right? And all this kind of thing, all the way you can extend to IoT or even to your partners, become easier to share data to your internal different department, all working on the same mesh, and basically all just having different kind of topic structure to separate the data. And of course, very importantly, is the security aspect, the governance on that mesh, basically the entitlement, what kind of data you can subscribe to, you can publish to, that's all under control and governed. Yeah? So I'll give you a last kind of example is CFAX that we're working on with this guy. So CFAX in China basically is the one and only government organization to control all foreign currency exchange. So everything you trade with Chinese currency yuan, you have to go through CFAX. So they have here about almost 30,000 members as in banks, central banks from different countries. They're all going through CFAX to actually do their Chinese currency trading. So they actually, I think it's probably the very rare ones in the world that you can only do that probably in China, having everything all governed, centralized governed, right, the whole FX market. So what they're thinking is, rather than before, the interbank business always going through the core, which is them. Yeah, so even including between two banks that want to trade currencies, they have to go through CFAX to say, oh, here's me, and then CFAX does all the kind of risk analysis, profiling, everything, and say, oh, you're clear to go. And then you will check the other guys, and then the CFAX will host the kind of pricing negotiation between the two banks. So they say, can we actually do all those on the edge? That means, can you guys, I'll give you a platform. You guys do all your risk analysis and clearance and whatever on the edge, and you guys between banks do the pricing negotiation as long as you notify me, right? As long as we have a process to do that. So that means they push the computing power to the edge. So we call it edge computing. Basically an IoT kind of concept. They use that, and then the interbanks start to actually do their stuff. They're on their own platform. And not only that, they provide a little private cloud on that. We call it the fintech node. Basically, it's a fintech, distributed architecture core. So it's a little platform. Not only I give you fixed engine, I give you blockchain or AI in the past layer. So you got all that. You don't need to kind of develop yourself. And then you just concentrate on your SaaS layer and then make use of whatever we provide you. And then not only you can use our SaaS, which I give you market data, algo trading, you can also develop your own SaaS on the same platform. And then you can start sharing data on the same kind of, because Solace provide a mesh. And then you can start sharing data between different banks. And that is amazingly 30,000 fintech nodes all connected. Like a little kind of IoT world that you're building for financial services platform, right? So we are not actually talking about, this is just an example how they do it in China now, but I'm thinking more between different vendors for market data, we can actually also share some stuff, hook onto the mesh, and then get the stuff you want and contribute to the mesh if you want. Yeah, and then everyone can, if I got a bunch of guys who is really clever with AI engine stuff, I don't want to hire another bunch of guys to write connectivity stuff and fit handler stuff, right? Can I just make use of some platform and then I start to really do what I want to do and what the customer really wants at the end. Customer don't care about your connectivity at the end of the day. They just want that data, right? So basically that's the last slide, yeah. So that's a kind of little kind of use case we put on the kind of on the Solace mesh that we are promoting, and also in general the market data. How can it be more standardized and more sharing of the data and focus on a smarter logic for the business? That's my presentation. Any questions?